Hello and welcome. We are here on the beautiful campus of the Indian School of Business at Hyderabad, and we are here to discuss the hopes and expectations from the interim union budget. It's of course going to be a vote on account because elections are coming up in just about a couple of months. I have with me Professor Ashwini Chatre, who in fact teaches economics and public policy here, and he is also the executive director of the Bharati Institute of Public Policy here. And I also have Professor Prasanna Tantri, who teaches finance here, and you are also heading the Center for Financial Analytics here. So I also have so many of these students, bright young faces, all of them are studying economics, finance, policy, and whatever else that you may think is required in today's India. The dream is very, very big. The Prime Minister says by 2047, when India is 100 years old, we are going to be a developed economy. And the immediate goalpost actually is to say that just within the next couple of years, perhaps by 2027, will be a $5 trillion economy, the third biggest in this world. And to take us on this journey, of course, instrument like the budget, of course, it's only an interim budget, but I'm going to ask Professor Chabri first. What are your hopes and expectations from this? What do you think the government should do, should not do, when we have already said this dream, aspiration for India that we are going to be the third largest in the world just in a couple of years?
Well, it will take more than a few years, but it's a very good opportunity to continue building on a lot of the good stuff that this government has already put in a lot of investment in. I will give you the example of international leadership that is coupled with very targeted and excellent public investment. The example of the International Solar Alliance, for example. It is followed up last year with the International Global Alliance on biofuels. This is leadership that is backed up by public investment. I am afraid that the government may lose track of their objectives by not following up. So this is a good opportunity for the government to show that they mean business, and it's not just international cheap talk, but by building capacity internally within the country, India can become an exporter of energy, whether in the form of biofuels or in the form of solar.
So we'll come back to climate resilient technologies and how that is going to help our economy. Professor Tantri, budget, immediately we say fiscal deficit, but in an election year we can't expect the government and political parties to make commitments or stick to commitments on such issues. And yet, what would you say the government needs to take care of primarily in this budget?
Yeah, so as a finance person, the way I look at budget is whether the numbers are credible. That's all about, otherwise budget is just a statement of, these are just numbers. So the one thing that I look at is the FM has earned credibility with a lot of effort over the last 3 years, and election year should not become a, I was telling students today, the actual numbers you will know 2 years later. What will come on February 1st is their projection, right? So these should be reasonable. I understand political compulsion like they did last time. If you see the last interim budget, there was a 70,000 crore PM Kisan program, but it was provided for in the budget. There have been schemes, if you see prior to what used to happen in India in interim budgets, long announcements but not provided for in the budget. So these expenditures were announced but not in the numbers. This is where a finance person becomes really uncomfortable. So at least there was some spending, but it was in the budget. So I'm looking for something, if you ask me one thing, it's maintain credibility. Because that will go a long way, because once you credibility, be it central bank, government, whatever, when they make announcements, if markets start trusting those numbers, then our path to this 5 trillion will be faster. So
aspirational India is what we are talking about, and when we say size of the economy, the number of jobs that we create for that economy has not really been able to rise. And even if we see the labor force participation ratio, 60% in rural India we say, 50% in urban India, does that mean 50% of our population or 40% rural India not working or underemployed, cyclical employment? What you spoke about, the climate technologies to be used, that's of course a path forward. But what should the government do to say that we are on this path we will create this kind of a growth for everyone, because we all, just recently saw the inequity report and inequality report, and those spoke about how the top 1%, actually owns 50% of the financial wealth, and the top 5 in the world actually had doubled their incomes or doubled their assets in the last, since 2020.
I think India is in a great position to position climate change as an opportunity rather than a cost. It is possible for us to build on our strengths. So we have a lot of land where we can actually grow energy. Not agricultural land, because that will create trade-offs with food, but there is forest land. There are 50 million hectares of land on which nothing is growing right now. And this is where the most vulnerable, the poorest populations live. If we can use this opportunity to export what the rest of the world needs, let's say energy, let's say biofuels, let's say solar power, if we can spread the goods, we will not only create jobs, create wealth in a way that is well distributed, and we will create opportunities out of climate change where everyone is thinking of it as a threat. We can help ourselves to supplying what the world needs, which is energy. We don't have petrol, but we have biofuels.
You are in fact associated with the Power Finance Corporation.
Yes.
Is the government actually thinking in those terms, because now green energy is the future?
Yeah, so so they are. For instance, the Power Finance Corporation, now it's an infrastructure company, and almost 10 to 15% of the new loans that we lend is to the sectors that Professor Chatre mentioned. And we have an explicit mandate to focus on renewable energy. We lend at lower rates. So there is some focus, and I agree that these things need to be continued. And one point, since you brought about labor force participation rate, one problem with India, 60% is not, it's still a low number, but if you see the gender gap there, the women's especially in urban area, it's 20%. It used to be. Now, what we are seeing in last 6 months, maybe it could be we have to look at longer term numbers as researchers, but suddenly it's going up now.
But it came down from 2005 to 2020.
No, those are different set of surveys. You can't compare. This is a PLFS which started from 2017.
Okay.
So from 2017 we have authentic set of numbers. The same international standard like any other country does. This is PLFS survey. We didn't have PLFS before 2017. So that will be some other survey saying something. They are not comparable. But at least now.
It seemed to suggest from 32 to 18%.
Yeah, but then you can't compare that 32 with this number. There are different surveys. But at least. So in this context, the self-help groups is one way where FM has spoken about this in our previous 2 budgets. Maybe I have missed it. I have not seen too much action in those. There was something recently, policy to give drones to self-help groups or something. That's the only announcement that I heard of. That is a gold mine to increase women's labor force participation.
Professor Tantri spoke about the self-help groups. The Prime Minister did make an announcement saying that out of the 10 crore women, there would be, Lakpati Didis is one program, and another one is the Drone Didi, where they are giving 10 lakh worth of drones to about 15,000 women. And in fact, by Republic Day, we are going to be seeing about 1,200 of those women earning their pilot certificates, drone pilot certificates. It's also a country that's being seen as the 3rd largest economy for startups. And all these youngsters that I see, hopefully many of them will become startups or be initiators of startups. Any thoughts on what you want more? Because we say Make Up India, 1.12 lakh startups that we are registered in the country, we say 111 unicorns, and all of us are looking at those unicorns.
I want to say, like, recently our Honorable Prime Minister announced PM Suryodaya Yojana, and which aims to install solar panels on 1 crore households rooftops. So I want to ask Professor, so can we expect some announcement in the budget that provides for boosting the manufacturing of these firms, like maybe in the form of PLIs or tax breaks, or maybe promoting the startups which are working in this green energy sector?
Any indications, Professor?
I expect it. I have seen it, and these expectations have been met in the last few budgets. What I also expect, in order to make that possible and amplify its impact, is public investments in the infrastructure that will allow, for example, rooftop solar to be adopted more aggressively.
Yeah. Infrastructure, you spoke about solar, which is something that is climate resilient world that we are hoping the technologies will be climate resilient as well. But the government is also talking about having doubled infrastructure in terms of the highways, the number of kilometers that they give us, the numbers are all very impressive. Is that going to have an effect on, when we say China, the gap is huge. I mean, we say China and India and that's the aspirational goal. The gap is about, $15 trillion or so. With technologies like this, like with ecological agriculture, people feel the change is very slow. And yet, that's the road to take?
The change is not slow. It's that we are not measuring the right thing. So the biggest achievement of this government over the last 10 years, you can think it is slow, is to move the focus away from production and our fetish for millions of tons of food and so on, away from that total production to costs and ways to reduce costs. So the emphasis on natural farming, on ecological agriculture, on agroecology is geared not towards increasing yields and increasing production, but reducing costs.
Is it happening to scale when we talk about it?
It is happening at scale. And it's not just the central government, the state governments are joining that bandwagon, because that is the key to improving agriculture, is to increase the margins between profit and between revenue and cost, not increase yields at all costs.
Every country proudly speaks about the very low cost digital infrastructure that we have created, and saying, like the professor mentioned, not going just after manufacturing, like China say export oriented manufacturing, and now we are talking about an infrastructure which perhaps allows you to sit in a village and work for a multinational in some other part of the world. Those kind of innovations is what many of you are thinking of. Businesses, what is it?
So specifically, I would say the advent of CBDC, though it is in the experimentation phase, it will aid the UPI, which was, I think, the biggest success of the government, as even the foreign students, when they came here, they were actually amazed that, oh, you can just pay with your phone. So I think that is the greatest thing that the government has done.
Digital infrastructure is something that everyone's looking at with great hope, but is that that thing which is going to actually take us to that destination that we are looking at? Because the way in which the world is working has completely changed.
Yeah, so let me wear my researcher hat here a little bit. So one big problem that poor face in India is access to credit. And the reason why you don't have access to credit, it's not that you're not credible, it's not that lenders don't have money. It's extremely hard for large monolithic banks to service these small loans. Fixed costs are very large. What digital infrastructure can do can reduce the cost of servicing these loans, dealing with these poor people, provide information, and that can improve access to credit. So suppose if you have a project which the return is 15%, if the cost is 25%, if the loan is at 25%, you won't get financing. Now because of all this will reduce the cost of intermediation, which will increase the flow of credit to such people. So that's one of the biggest benefits of digital infrastructure.
In fact, the Prime Minister mentioned about something financial inclusion that should have happened in 47 years. We managed to do it in just about 6 years because of the digital infrastructure that is put in place and the inclusion that has come with everyone starting to use these kind of technologies, isn't it?
Yeah, so we finance people don't get excited that easily. So on the savings front, yes, definitely true. With the PMJDY accounts on the savings front, what he's saying is absolutely true. Because you had 50% of the population not having bank accounts, now almost everyone has bank account. And you just don't go by you can ask anyone roaming around, they will have a bank account. On credit, no, not yet. On credit, this is yet to be done. We still have a large population not having, that's why Swanidhi came. PM Swanidhi scheme, we did a study on that. It's a great scheme where they give credit to the street vendors, 70 lakh of them. And we did a survey of random 5,000 street vendors across the country. None of them had a bank loan before. None of them. So
newly coming,
yeah, it tells you the positives and negatives of both. Positive is it is giving access to the right set of people. It tells you negative is there is a large segment of population not having access to credit.
We are talking very big numbers when we talk about the numbers of people who require jobs every single year. Yes. Some 9 million jobs or something, just to be at the rate at which we are. Does it have the potential? Do you see it happening?
Absolutely. So big jobs ISB will give. So you will ask them, that's there. A big number of jobs this will give, because one of the reasons, there are many reasons. One is skills. Obviously, Professor Chhatre will, others, climate, all of these issues there. One big reason is not having access to credit at a reasonable price. If you give credit at a reasonable price, people have great ideas. These street vendors make like 30,000 rupees net profit a month. This is not, when this 10,000 rupee was given, their return, the marginal return what we call is like 3 to 4% a month. This is the kind of businesses that are there. So jobs may not be formal jobs sitting in an office. This kind of a job means any kind of a job where it's gainful employment. If you could define it as gainful employment, I think digital infrastructure is one of the ingredients. It's not the only thing. It alone will not give, but it ticks a big box. That's how I'll put it.
When we have such a huge, manpower or human power, should I say, demographic, let's put it that way, in that numbers which are the productive age group of people, and yet the very recent annual status of education report had very dismaying kind of statistics saying that those in the 14 to 18 year age group are hardly able to do, 42% of them were not able to do a 3-digit by 1-digit mathematics or able to read in their regional language. Is that where we are lacking? I mean, I'm saying the enrollment has gone up in schools, but the learning outcome doesn't seem to be there. And skill development, we only saw scams in our neighboring states, skill development scams, but beyond that, to the scale that we need, not doing enough?
We are not doing enough. I'm unequivocal in that opinion. Our investment in basic education has been lacking for a long time, and that is one big lacuna that this government over the last 2 terms has failed to address or establish a precedent. A lot of things that were not done before have been done, but basic education and investment in the demographic dividend is lacking.
And do you see that happening in this budget? I mean, this is an election year budget. We have to make it look good for people.
There will be statements, but on the issue, one problem, as a teacher, I don't know whether I should say this. One problem with this primary education is teacher accountability. I studied in a government school. There was one teacher for 4 classes and all that, and we used to have.
You at least had one teacher.
yeah. So because I come from Karnataka, decent, a rich district of Karnataka, but whatever you spend, we should not stop, but we should not just look at allocation. You can allocate anything you want. But if you don't have accountability, if it is not implemented well, and in this, especially in government setups, there is no accountability. If I don't teach well, these people will complain to the dean tomorrow morning. That does not happen.
That feedback system and that ability
needs to come. It has to be both. Increase allocation and also make teachers also. If people are not learning, then what are these people teaching? Either the students are structurally bad, which is unlikely, or nobody is even going to the class. That must be happening. So students must be playing around and doing nothing in class, which I have experienced, so I can tell you.
I had a question on PLI scheme. So currently it's about 4.5% of our budget that goes to it. And you mentioned about allocating, which is equivalent to what health and education combined get together, right? So are we not allocating the right budget in the right space, or are we not addressing it at the root cause? Because how effective has PLI really been to create those jobs that we're talking about?
So okay, so the idea of PLI is to see, ideally as a market fundamentalist, if you can call me, I would say you create situations and investment will come. But world doesn't work that way. Even the best of the best capitalist countries, this invisible hand is very, very visible in the way they have grown, right? So you need some carrot, some stick, Tesla forcing them to manufacture here, and it has ripple effects. Initially it will be all high end, but then high end, then you need, if Maruti, when it started, the kind of, these jobs, it will take time. So it need not be PLI versus the something else, and we should count state governments also. It's when you, as Professor Chhatha said, it's not just central government. We tend to add up education and health, but health hasn't been bad. Ayushman Bharat is one of the largest insurance schemes anywhere in the world. Most countries, Brazil, Indonesia, they're still struggling to do something like that. But education, yes. So we tend to speak both of them in the same thing. Number of hospitals established and all, they've doubled, tripled and all. But education, again, I think the issue is of accountability. It's very hard to do.
The problem also is that different states of the country are in different stages of the demographic curve. Yes. And when we say education, health and all that, several parts of the country, we have fantastic ones, like
Sure.
a Tamil Nadu,
Yeah.
well, like a Karnataka even,
Yeah.
but several others, perhaps a lot more to be desired.
So you were talking about health being good. I just wanted to understand the allocation to health is as a percentage of GDP is low compared to a lot of other countries. But is that the right measure when we look at the budget, or is it also a lot about the other schemes and the implementation?
See, I will follow Prasanna here. Ujala is an investment in health, but we don't think it is an investment in health, right? Midday meal is an investment in health, but we don't think it is an investment in health. We think it is an investment in either welfare or in education. So looking at it as an accounting exercise, how much is given to health, we just miss the real picture, and that is why the investment in health is actually more than what we hear or we read. And that is what we need in education, is that we can impart education in many ways, just like we can improve our health in many ways. We have been lacking in imagination on the education side, that we have shown on the health side. So it's not that we can't do it, it's just that we haven't.
So the government had an audacious goal of doubling farmer incomes by 2024-25. So are we on track of doing that? And if not, then what does the government need to do in its budget to enable farmers?
Biggest challenge, I think, for the government has been one of...
I think the doubling farmers' income has quietly dropped from the menu because we quickly figured out that it's not a reasonable goal, and there are two reasons for this. The first reason, and I think the biggest reason, is that we have a
Not reasonable goal, many people are going to jump on you.
Yeah, it's not a reasonable goal because we can't measure farmers' incomes. We have no idea what their income is right now. So to say whether it is doubled or not is completely unreasonable, because first we have to set a baseline to measure what the farmers' incomes are, and we don't have one. The second big problem is that we still rely on self-reporting. And unless we improve our methods for actually estimating what the production is and what the farm gate prices are, whatever we do will require a vigorous waving of hands, the numbers that we come up with. So doubling farmers' income was an unreasonable target. What we want is a measurable increase in incomes, which requires us to measure the baseline income and be able to measure the transactions. We don't have that.
We have reached the mark of 16,000 crores and export to 85 countries, and with the launch of INS Vikrant 1.5 years ago, we have immense opportunity to become a defense exporter full time. So what do you expect the government to do in this regard?
Recently, we started, this Azerbaijan, that conflict also where BrahMos is getting, I think there is opportunity because people are more because right now it's a oligopoly kind of a market or monopolistic market. 3-4 countries are only new player coming in. There will be demand this side and people are fighting across the globe. I know. So I think and also most of our own armed forces, most of the stuff is imported. There is scope for replacing that as well. But I don't see anything dramatic happening in the budget because given it's an interim budget and this is slow and steady. Defense corridor, there is a corridor in UP and there is one in South Chennai, Coimbatore somewhere. You can go and see work is going on there. So maybe there will be some allocations and here and there, but I don't know whether this interim budget will be used to make any major announcement.
We do expect that there's going to be a lot of focus on ease of doing business, but however, can we expect lowering of corporate tax rates given that the neighboring regions do have lower tax rates, or such as UAE has a tax rate of 9% compared to our maximum marginal rates?
So I think the biggest problem in India for ease of doing business, one thing it's very important in order of magnitude is judicial delays, enforcement of contract. It's not taxes as much. Once you have we had yesterday Zee Sony deal fail. Now they're going to fight for 6 months and 2 years, 5 years, and so we don't have that has to improve. When we had the ease of doing business ranking, even when we improved on this enforcement of contract, we were 150 only, even then. So I think more than taxes, I don't think they've already cut corporate taxes significantly. In election year, it will be a bad optic to cut corporate taxes. I think something on enforcement of contract, easing stuff, that I think will help.
Okay, last question I'm going to take now and then we can wind up.
Professor, in light of fairly high inflation in the previous years and excess money coming in the form of GST collections, can we anticipate any cuts in the personal income tax rates?
I know you got a good salary and you have to worry about it. I don't think we can only say anything. I don't think.
So this is certainly an interim budget and therefore I guess it is keeping maximum numbers of people. Thank you so much for this fascinating discussion. We went perhaps beyond the interim budget to discuss larger concerns of the youngsters and those who are going to lead the country in the future as well. Thank you so much for watching.